What's up, y'all? So I just got a chance to be interviewed by Phil from America Dream Youth. If you don't know about them, you need to check them out. Just a great organization that try to help veterans transition out of the military into their career civilian life. And he's currently doing a Airstream tour across country, getting a chance to interview other veterans. So there are some amazing veterans that are serving here at the Franklin Fire Department, so he got a chance to interview them as well. And anyway, I just thought I would share this interview in case you want to learn more about my backstory and some of the fun questions that Phil had to ask. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this interview right now.
Here with Jeff Rose in the Franklin Station 5 Fire Department. I have no idea why we're doing it in this fire department, but it's cool to be in the fire department.
It's awesome.
Yeah. And we've got our Airstream trailer, which I'll be hanging out in for the next 5 weeks with my wife and my dog, and we got about 5,100 miles. We've got 6 different bases that we're going to do some workshops, and then I've got about 40 interviews, and so I appreciate you coming out and doing this. We've got an audience of obnoxious firefighters here.
Witty.
Yeah. So I know you served 9 years in the National Guard, and then you had a 17-month deployment. So talk about after that deployment, and you could share if you'd like about that deployment, but share what you've done since then, and talk about your transition a little bit.
Yeah, I think I first have to mention, once you go 17 months and you come back, I was already a financial advisor, been doing that for 2.5 years, and I came back and was just ready to just start my life again. I quickly realized that it wasn't that easy. I can actually remember I had an appointment the first week I got back. I put on my shirt and tie, went to meet with a client, and I almost had not a panic attack, but I had anxiety of where am I? Why am I doing this? I just had to take some more time off and just kind of remember, because the Jeff Rose pre-deployment was the funny, stupid jokes, kind of corny guy. For 17 months, I became Staff Sergeant Rose. So I was the guy having to yell at my squad and make sure that everything was taken care of, so that I didn't get in trouble for my platoon sergeant, our company commander. And when I came back home, I was still Staff Sergeant Rose. So I was married, and what I quickly realized was I couldn't just tell my wife to go do something and expect her to do it, kind of like my soldiers did. She just kind of looked at me no, I'm not in your squad. Yeah, I think after about 3 to 6 months, finally just being back home, I just started doing the financial planner thing again, and kind of picked up where I left off eventually, and became a certified financial planner, which was one of the things I wanted to do. And then from there, I started the blog, Good Financial Sense, and published the first book, Soldier of Finance, and things just started working out from then.
Yeah. So talk to me about the 3 to 6 months. You're a military staff sergeant to being a husband. I don't know if you had kids at that time, and an advisor. Was it time, or were there any tools that you used?
Tools was therapy. Okay. My wife and I ended up seeing a therapist, and that was hard for me. Just because I'm deployed. I'm supposed to be able to take care of everything, and when I came back home, going to counseling and therapy, that just felt like I was weak. But just talking to other soldiers that also were in the same spot, you quickly realize we saw things that normal people shouldn't see. Just recognizing that that was just real life, and just trying to unpack that and deal with that, and just be able to talk that out and just kind of work that out with my wife, and where she could see and understanding where I was coming from. That was by far, that was the tool, that saved us. So I would strongly, highly encourage any soldier being deployed, whether it be 3 months, 17 months, don't feel that you were weak going out and seeking help.
So what was that? Was it sitting like this in front of the counselor for the first couple sessions, or it's what is this doing, or I'm doing this for my wife, or kind of talk me through that? Yeah,
what I do remember was one of the first trips my wife and I took. We just drove up to St. Louis, we were shopping for some furniture at our new house, and it was a 90-minute drive. And I remember just sitting in the car, not speaking. And it was me looking out the window, just trying to remember who I was before I left. I was playing back everything that happened while we were gone, and I just remember like getting home and like her saying like, you didn't even talk. And like that wasn't me. Like, I mean, you can hear me now. Like I'm a chatterbox. Like I love to talk. And so just going to counseling was just allowing me to speak, and just somebody to ask questions that was, I think just be able to just talk about things that I didn't realize kind of were there, that were just stuff I had to really just kind of work through and shift through, So I was open to it. I might have been like this in the beginning.
Well, I'm just asking.
But eventually, no, I was just able to just talk through stuff, and just realize that I wasn't the only one.
Right. And you're still married to the same woman, by the way.
Still married to the same woman, and we have 4 children now, so
wow.
It definitely is a deployment success story.
That's awesome. So ages, what are your ages of your kids?
We got 3 boys, 11, 8, and 7, and a daughter who will be 4 tomorrow.
Oh my gosh. You guys done?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, like officially done.
So you've been neutered?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So let's talk about the financial planner before the deployment and then the financial planner after the deployment and the counseling and all that kind of stuff, because you're still doing it and you're very successful at it and you've written best-selling books and all that kind of stuff. So talk to me about that.
Yeah, I think really it was pre-deployment. I was 20-some years old, didn't have a lot of real-world experience, and going there, I mean, just for one, being in Iraq and just seeing how they live. I mean, you come back home and when people are complaining because their internet's down or they got to wait 5 minutes in line at McDonald's, and it's just like you just start hearing the things that people complain about, and just one thing is enabled me to be just grateful. I mean, just grateful on so many different aspects, and something that I talk to my kids about a lot. One thing I mentioned, we have a daughter, and when we adopted her from the Philippines, we had a chance to go to her orphanage and just see how she lived, and just another life lesson that we can just tell our boys, because we have a nice house and nice things, and my kids have more pair of Nikes. My 7-year-old has had more pair of Nikes than I had before I was in high school, but I've always make them aware of that. They also do chores and other things too, but coming back from deployment, now you've just got, I feel like I aged a lot. I went from 28 years old to like 35 years old, and just having all that experience. But I think also too, it just made me obviously appreciate a lot of things, but also I didn't want to take any crap from anybody. I just had a lot of people look at me, well, you've only been doing this for 3 or 4 years. I'm like, yeah, and I also did a 17-month deployment in combat, so what's your point? Just anytime anybody wanted to like question whether like I was mature or experienced, I don't know, I didn't, it wasn't like I wanted to like argue with them, but I definitely didn't let it affect me. It's like, hey, that's how you feel, that's great, I'm moving on to the next one.
I've met with literally thousands of men and women who have either transitioned or are about to transition, and that can be a scary process. So that adds a whole nother level. So talk to me a little bit about, you're still in financial services, right? And talk a little bit about that career, because I think that's a potentially a great career for a lot of soldiers and veterans. Yeah,
and for me, it's something I just stumbled upon. A lot of people think, oh, your parents must have had money, or they got you, nepotism, they got you the job, and I share in my book, my dad, actually both my parents, they divorced when I was young, both of them filed bankruptcy, not once but twice. My dad passed away, he owed more than he was worth. My mom lost 2 houses to foreclosure with investment properties in Las Vegas. So like these were the financial lessons that were passed down on to me. And even knowing that, like I started off my college career, I took out student loan debt when I didn't have to because I joined the Guard, but I still took out student loans just to have extra spending cash while I was in school. And next thing I know, I'm graduating with over $30,000 of debt when I didn't have to have it. So that has been the inspiration, the motivation, the reason that I keep doing what I do. Whether it be my blog, YouTube videos, books, the financial planning, is because I know there are people out there that they want to make smart money decisions. They want to invest for their future, but either they just don't have the information because nobody taught them or showed them how to do it. So just kind of like a life mission is just giving the tools, and not just giving them tools to have the resources, but more importantly, the tools to take action. Because you can research all day long and read books and listen to podcasts and watch videos, but if you don't actually do it, it doesn't matter.
How do you help people take action?
So right now, like one of my things I love, I've been doing a lot of YouTube videos, and people say, oh, like I need to do that. Like, okay, when are you going to do it? Give me a date, give me a deadline. I just like to challenge people, like, okay, you need to do it or you are going to do it, and when are you going to do it?
So what challenge would you give? Because we surveyed a couple thousand, we got a couple thousand responses. The top 4 things they wish they would have gotten done before they transition out, the first 3 were financial related.
Wow.
Right?
Powerful.
So too much debt. They made commitments to these big cars and leases and all these kind of things. Right?
Yeah.
You're smiling.
Oh
so.
yeah, I just did a video about that.
Yeah. So they make these big commitments, and all of a sudden, then they get out of the military, and they have other expenses that they didn't have when they were in the military, and they're like, "Wow, this is a big commitment." So what? So challenge. I'd like you to put out a challenge to those watching this. What can they do today?
Yeah, I think the biggest misconception that people have when it comes to investing is that like, oh, I don't know enough, I don't have enough money to get started, it's too hard, it's too complicated. And maybe 10 years ago, I could have agreed with that, but nowadays, I mean, there are so many different investment platforms. I mean, there's investment apps that you can literally open an account on your phone and start investing within like an hour or less. I mean, there really are no excuses. And a lot of these investment platforms already have pre-built portfolios, basically meaning that you don't have to make the decision on what to invest into. You just got to open the account, get some money in there. And as far as the misconception, like, I don't have enough to get started, there are plenty of apps, online brokerages now that you can open an account with nothing or start investing with as little as $25.
Wow.
So the excuse is I don't have enough money. No, that's not a good excuse. I don't have enough time. No, that's not a good excuse. Like, there are no excuses. So there are so many different platforms out there that you can get started literally in a minute.
So gratitude was something that I struggled with because I wanted what I had and I wanted what you had. I don't know if that makes sense or not.
Yeah.
And so I was just, things made me feel more important, more successful, and now I'm like, those things don't matter as much to me anymore. So I don't know if you want to talk about gratitude, because you mentioned gratitude with your daughter and visiting communities in Iraq. So you want to talk about that briefly?
Yeah, I mean, definitely prior deployment, as I mentioned, I had student loan debt from not to pay for school, but to buy things. So I was buying clothes and going out to the bars and eating dinner. Like I'm in college. I shouldn't be spending what I did. But then really just stumbling upon finance, being deployed, all those things really just played a factor. When I came back home, I remember I wouldn't buy like a $20 t-shirt unless I really needed a $20 t-shirt. But before that, I was like, I need 4 of those. And I just remember all these things I would just waste money on. Not to mention the fact that my wife was an amazing battle buddy. She would question me on, do you really need that? Can you really afford that right now? I'm very grateful to have her, just to speak truth into my life when I wasn't ready to hear it, but I definitely needed to hear it. And then, she just showed me, like when she started showing, like with my dad and just how much he was with debt, and I started really seeing him and how much that debt weighed on him. That was really the big eye opener for me.
Yeah.
And I firmly believe, like my dad, if you look at his death certificate, he died of a heart attack. To me, he died because of the stress he had because of his debt. He was in a situation where he was taking out cash advances on one credit card to pay for the other. And that was just a monthly cycle that he was doing for years.
Yeah.
So just seeing all of that, and to see like where I'm at now, and I'm just grateful. Like not every day is perfect. In the Rose household, we have our struggles, but there are definitely 3 things that I have a 5-minute journal I do every day, and just identify just 3 things I'm grateful for. And it's so funny because some days are great, other days it's like my youngest son brushed his teeth and put his shoes on today and got ready for school. Like, amen.
5-minute journal. Right.
So it's just a lot of times like you think they have to be big, huge things, but really there are so many little things in life that we can be grateful for.
But just that feeling of a gratefulness, because I was in Mexico, it was a year ago next month, and we built a house for a family, 120 square foot place, right? This family was living on a dirt floor. They had 3 kids, a single mom, and she was like the lotto, right? Whatever that 1.7 billion somebody won on it was, she was like more grateful about this house because she had a floor and insulation.
Yeah.
And so it's like I came home, I'm like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize what Mexico was, what a third world country that was, and Philippines and those type of things. So how do you share that with some of the people you connect with?
Just one example here recently. So we just had fall break. We rented a house down in Florida with some other families, and we're down there right after Hurricane Michael, had hit. And where we were at, it was far enough away where you didn't really see what was going on. And the last night we were there, we went out to dinner with one of the other couples, and we just started talking to the waitress. And through that conversation, we found out that she lost everything. She lost her house, lost all of her belongings. But the way that she said it, it wasn't like, feel sorry for me. It was just, I remember her clearly saying this, it could have been a whole lot worse. And I'm thinking, you just lost everything that you own, in the hurricane, and yet here you are at work and saying it could have been a whole lot worse. It was one of the greatest opportunities where I've always wanted to give a big tip to somebody, but you know, I didn't want just to give it to anybody. And like, it was, I mean, this girl, I mean, it was her. And I shared that in a YouTube video just because, not so much me giving the tip, but it was, here we have this person who's lost everything, and here she is, like, positive, you know, finding things to be grateful that she has a job, grateful that she's alive, you know, grateful that she has a couch to sleep on at a friend's house, you know, not that she lost everything. I don't know, that's me sharing how being grateful, but just like hearing that story and sharing that with my boys, like, hey, I just want to let you know, like, could you imagine if you lost everything right now? If you lost your iPad, you know, you lost your Alabama jersey, you know, all your Nike shoes, like, how would that make you feel? You know, and just had that conversation with them. So just teaching them and just be able to share that story. Because, man, like, we could all take notes, you know, from this young girl that lost everything, and yet she's grateful that she's got a job and she's still alive.
Yeah. We need to be I need to be reminded quite a bit, right? Of what I mean. I get to do what I get to do. I get to take 5 weeks off of my daily routine and come in and, you know, interview you and meet you in person for the first time, and the fire department, and most people can't do that.
Yeah,
they can't
absolutely.
do that. So I feel super grateful. But this is great. So we want to share your YouTube channel. So I don't know if you want to share your YouTube channel. What is it? youtube.com/.
Yeah, youtube.com/. So Wealth Hackers, who just did a rebrand. I know that you know me as Good Financial Sense, but we're currently doing this rebrand and really just trying to show people just how to accelerate, you know, building wealth and accruing wealth, just using fun strategies, whether it be investing or I've really gotten into online business, you know, with the blog and everything else. So just have a lot of fun, just sharing a lot of mindset stuff, you know, a lot of mindset stuff that I wasn't passed down to me, but just sharing that, you know, just trying to get through those mental obstacles that many of us have.
Yeah. So last piece of advice I'd like you to share. So a lot of people in the military, you know, they go through a transition class and they meet with counselors, and then the CEOs are telling them, go, this is really important. You got to go to school. You got to get a degree, all that kind of stuff. And they might say, hey, listen, I'm interested in starting a business. They might go, oh, you know what your chances are of having a successful business, right? And even I was told this, you know, growing up. What advice would you give them in terms of if someone did want to become an entrepreneur, full or part-time?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, you talk entrepreneurship, like you're just speaking my language, you know, and I think it's, obviously you got to provide for your family, you know, so, you know, a business that doesn't make any money is not a business. I mean, that's a hobby. You know, so if you got to get a 9-to-5 just to pay the bills and support the family, do that. But then, you know, on the side, that's where you can start the business on the side. And I know the firefighters mentioned they have like a couple days off, you know, where they can start something on the side. You know, that's how you start it. You know, see if you can make a little extra money, get a client, whether it be consulting or an Etsy business or selling something on eBay, you know, whatever that may be. But, you know, make sure that you can actually make money from it. And I just know so many people that had their full-time job that did something on the side, you know, did that for several years to where eventually it became the main thing. You know, the same thing with my blog. I mean, so right now, like my blog is the business. You know, the financial planning business right now is my side hustle.
Got it.
You know,
interesting.
But you know, that wasn't how it always was. You know, for many years, over a decade, it was the financial planning business. Right. But it just depends on whatever that niche is and your passion, and I've just seen people scale it and grow it and have a lot of fun doing it.
Yeah. So a couple of things I want to reiterate on that is, if you have a spouse, I've had a lot of people come up to me and going, sure, I want to start a business, but my wife is just nervous. I'm like, yeah, you've had money direct deposited in your account twice a month for the last however long you've been in the military, and all of a sudden you want to have no income coming in, right?
Yeah.
You're starting this business, and she's had certainty while she's been with you, or he's had certainty, and then all of a sudden all that certainty goes away. So I've shared the same thing. It's like, you know what? Do the 9-to-5 or the 24/6 a.m. to 6 a.m. the next day. Put your wife and your kids to bed, and then work on your side hustle. Watch some of your YouTube videos. It's easier now to set up a business than it ever was when I first started in the early 90s. It's like, oh my gosh, to build a website was $25,000 in the early 90s. You know, now you can build a website in what? 2 hours, an hour?
Yeah.
For how much?
Like maybe $100 or less.
Right? And you can even test your business out for $100 or less, right? You could do Facebook ads, you could set up an Etsy store and say, hey, it's 6 weeks for delivery, you know, on this custom-made product. See if someone wants to actually buy it.
Yeah.
And I think those are some of the things you share on your.
It's just crazy how many different opportunities there are. It just depends on what you do and how you want to do it. But I can know one thing I can speak to, because like I am definitely the visionary. You know, I'm always 3 steps ahead, and my wife is like the black and white. Like I need to see hard numbers. You know, so something just to have that balance was like I just had to create spreadsheets and just to show her, like, hey, you know, here's the revenue, here's the expenses, we are making money. It took me several years to figure that out. Once I finally did, it gave her, you know, just the confidence she needed, you know, for us to move forward. Versus me just like, oh yeah, we're gonna do this and we're gonna do that, and I mean I could do that all day long, but proof is in the pudding.
Right,
so I had to show
right.
her the hard numbers that everything was working out.
Talk a little bit about your happiness, and we'll wrap it up with that.
Yeah, you know, I think, man, I just think about just what they do, and when they can actually go out and like save somebody's life. I mean, just to be able to serve others, there's so much fulfillment in that. And just here lately, like one of my biggest things I love when somebody messages me and say, hey, Jeff, like I'd never invested before, and I watched one of your videos, I watched a blog post, and I opened my first account. You know, when I get those, like that just brings joy to my heart. You know, I don't know who they are or where they live, but the fact that I know, it's not the fact they invested that $25, $50, you know, for that first time, but I know that they've set themselves up to have, you know, a financial future that is so different than my parents experienced, and many parents have experienced. Like that just gives me goosebumps.
Great conversation.